The wind howled across the white plains like a wounded creature. Snow covered everything: the sky, the ground, even the ruins of what once looked like a small alien village. The night was long and cruel, and the cold felt alive, biting into anything that dared to survive. A small figure stumbled through the storm. Her cloak was torn, her silver hair tangled with frost, and her thin arms hugged a small bag against her chest. Her name was Lyra, the last survivor of the Kareth colony. Her planet had fallen 3 days ago, burned, crushed, and forgotten. Now she was just another refugee, running from soldiers who had already forgotten her people's name. Each step she took sank deep into the snow. Her boots were cracked. Her hands were blue. But she did not stop. Somewhere in her heart, a whisper told her that she was not meant to die here. She looked up at the sky. Black clouds hid the moons, and a stormlight flickered far away. "If only someone could hear me," she murmured, her voice trembling. Just once, someone kind. Her words vanished in the wind. Lyra reached a broken road half covered in ice. On one side stood an old human outpost, abandoned after the war, or so the stories said. Its metal walls were rusted, its power lights dead. But for Lyra, it was hope. She stumbled toward the door, pressed her hand on the cold steel, and whispered, "Please, open." The door creaked a little, as if listening, then fell silent again. Lyra's strength gave out. She dropped to her knees, snow swallowing her legs. Her vision blurred. The bag in her hands fell open. Inside were a few crystals, a broken locket, and a photo of her mother. Tears froze before they could fall. "Mother, I tried." She closed her eyes. For a moment, the world was silent. Then from somewhere inside the building came a faint sound, a mechanical hum followed by a human voice. "Who's there?" Lyra's eyes snapped open. A shadow moved behind the frosted window. She tried to speak, but only coughed. The door hissed and opened slightly, a wave of warm air spilling out. A man appeared, tall, wrapped in a heavy coat, his eyes sharp but gentle. He was Elias, a human mechanic who had stayed behind to repair the old outpost's reactors. He hadn't seen another living soul for weeks. But tonight he had heard footsteps. He aimed his light at her. "Wait, you're not human," he said softly. Lyra tried to move back, afraid. Humans had fought her people once. She remembered the screams, the soldiers, the fire. "Please," she whispered, I'm not dangerous." Elias saw the way she trembled, the ice on her lashes, the pain in her voice. He lowered the light. "You're freezing," she didn't reply. Her lips were blue now, her hands shaking. Without another word, he stepped forward and lifted her into his arms. Her body was light, too light. He could feel her bones through her torn clothes. "Hang on," he muttered, pushing the door open wider with his shoulder. The warmth inside hit her like sunlight. For the first time in days, she felt something other than pain. Her head rested against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his human heart. Elias placed her on a small cot near the reactor's heating vent. The light flickered across her alien features, pale skin with faint violet lines that shimmered faintly under the heat. She looked fragile, like something made of glass. He covered her with his coat, watching her shiver. "What were you doing out there alone?" he asked quietly. She barely opened her eyes. "Running. They destroyed everything, my people, all gone." Elias's jaw tightened. "War," he said bitterly. "It never ends, does it?" Lyra shook her head weakly. "Not for us." He looked at her again. Her face, her trembling hands, the fear that still clung to her like frost. She was a stranger, an alien, someone who should have been his enemy. Yet in this frozen night, she was just a lost soul in need of warmth. He sighed, sitting beside her. "You're safe here now. I'll make some heat packs." She didn't understand the words heat packs, but she understood his tone. It was kind, real, something she hadn't heard since her mother's last lullaby. As Elias turned to prepare the heater, Lyra looked at him, this human who had no reason to help her. Her heart, numb for so long, fluttered faintly. Outside, the storm grew louder, slamming against the metal walls. But inside, in that small outpost, a fragile silence settled. Lyra closed her eyes again, whispering softly, "Thank you." "Human." Elias didn't answer. He just sat near her, staring at the snow beyond the window. Somehow he knew this night would change everything. Because sometimes, in the darkest cold, warmth isn't found in machines or fire. It's found in the arms of someone who still believes in mercy. And as the storm screamed outside, the human and the alien, two enemies of a forgotten war, shared the quiet beginning of something that would soon shake both their worlds. Lyra woke to a soft hum. For a moment she didn't know where she was. The air was warm and the steady rhythm of a machine echoed nearby. A pale golden light filled the room, seeping through a cracked window. She blinked, her vision clearing slowly. She wasn't in the snow anymore. She was alive. Her first thought was disbelief. Her second was fear. She sat up suddenly, her eyes darting around the small metallic room. Old tools lay scattered on a table. Wires hung from the ceiling. The smell of burned oil mixed with something warm, soup. Then she saw him. Elias stood near the heating unit, his back turned, stirring something in a pot. His heavy jacket hung on a chair beside her. He was only wearing a simple gray shirt now, sleeves rolled up, hands marked with grease and scars. The sound of him humming a quiet human tune echoed gently in the room. Lyra's heart raced. Humans had killed her people. Humans had taken her home. And yet, one had saved her. She looked at her reflection in the metal wall. Pale face, silver hair, faint violet markings that pulsed weakly with her heartbeat. She looked broken, half alien, half ghost. When Elias turned around, their eyes met. He froze for a second, then smiled softly. "You're awake." Lyra hesitated, her lips dry. Where am I?" "In my outpost," he said, walking closer. "I found you outside last night. You almost froze to death." She remembered the storm, the endless cold, and how his arms had felt, strong, steady, warm. A faint shiver ran through her again. "You're safe now," he continued, setting a bowl of soup on the small table beside her. "Eat this. It'll help." Lyra stared at the steam rising from the bowl. It smelled strange but comforting. "Why did you help me?" she asked in a quiet, suspicious tone. "I'm not human." Elias sat across from her. His blue eyes were calm, thoughtful. "Because you were dying." "That's reason enough," Lyra frowned. "Humans don't save Kareth, they destroy them." He sighed, running a hand through his messy hair. "Maybe some did, but not me." Silence fell between them. The sound of wind pressed against the window like a whisper. Lyra looked down at her trembling hands. "I lost everything," she said softly. "My home, my family, my world." Elias didn't reply. He didn't know what to say to pain like that. Instead, he pushed the bowl gently toward her. "Eat first. Talk later." Lyra lifted the spoon carefully. The soup was hot, her hand shaking as she brought it to her lips. The warmth spread through her, chasing away the last of the cold. For the first time in days, she felt life returning to her body. "You're kind," she murmured after a moment. "But why are you here alone?" Elias smiled faintly. "Exile, maybe, or choice. After the war ended, I didn't want to go back. I stayed to keep the reactors alive so ships could still find shelter." She tilted her head slightly. "You fix things?" He nodded. "Machines, engines, sometimes people too when I can." Her violet eyes met his. "You fixed me." Elias looked away, pretending to check the heater. "You weren't broken, just cold." Lyra almost smiled. Almost. But her heart was still heavy. She looked toward the window where snow still danced outside. "My people. They won't come for me. They think I'm dead." Elias turned to her, his voice gentle. "Then you start again. You're alive, that's what matters." His words felt strange but powerful. Simple. Human. They stayed in her chest like a warm flame. Lyra wrapped her arms around herself. "You speak as if living is easy." "It isn't," Elias said quietly. "But dying is worse." Their eyes met again. Two survivors of different worlds, each carrying their own scars. Something unspoken passed between them. An understanding of loneliness. Lyra looked around the outpost again. The walls were old, the machines outdated, yet everything was kept clean. She noticed a small flower in a jar on the table, frozen but carefully placed. "You live like someone waiting," she said. Elias chuckled softly. "Maybe I was. Until last night." Her cheeks warmed slightly, though she didn't understand why. "You shouldn't say things like that," she muttered. "Why not?" he asked. "Because humans and Kareth, we're not supposed to talk like friends." He smiled faintly. "Good thing I don't care about supposed to." For the first time, Lyra laughed, a quiet, broken sound but real. It startled even her. Elias smiled wider. Outside, the wind began to calm. Light filtered through the clouds, silver and soft. Lyra stood slowly, still wrapped in his coat, and stepped closer to the window. The landscape stretched endlessly, quiet and untouched. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Elias joined her side. "It's dangerous too, but beautiful things usually are." Lyra turned her head, studying his face. There was kindness in his eyes, but also something else. Sadness, loss. He wasn't just helping her out of pity. He was saving a part of himself through her. And in that silent realization, she felt something new stir in her chest. A fragile trust. As the first rays of sunlight touched the snow, Lyra said softly, Maybe I can help you fix the machines. My people use similar tech." Elias looked at her, surprised. "You want to help?" She nodded. "If I stay here, I should do something. I don't want to just survive," he grinned. "Then welcome aboard, partner." The word partner made her smile, shy but genuine. For the first time since her world ended, Lyra didn't feel like a ghost, and for Elias, the lonely human who thought he'd seen everything, this fragile alien girl had just brought a spark back into his frozen life. Outside, the storm faded completely, leaving behind a still world and two souls learning how to heal each other. The days passed slowly after the storm. The outpost, once cold and silent, now carried a faint rhythm of life. The sound of metal tools, the hum of old reactors, and sometimes, just sometimes, the quiet echo of laughter. Lyra had started working beside Elias. She didn't understand all his human machines, but her alien mind was sharp. She learned fast. When he showed her how to fix the power conduit, she watched every movement carefully, her silver eyes glowing faintly under the light. "Not bad?" Elias said one afternoon, wiping his hands. "You've got the hang of it." Lyra smiled shyly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "It's easier when someone teaches with patience," he chuckled. "Patience is all I've got left out here." She looked around the small workshop, the walls covered in tools, wires, and small mechanical parts. "You really built all this alone?" Elias nodded. "Piece by piece. Keeps me sane." Lyra touched the table, tracing a line in the dust. "When I was young, I used to build star beacons with my mother. She said every beacon was a wish we sent to the stars." He smiled softly. "Did they ever come true?" Her eyes dimmed a little. "Not yet." The silence that followed wasn't heavy, just quiet. The kind of silence that hides unspoken pain. Outside, the wind had softened into a calm breeze. Through the window, Lyra could see the endless snow plains stretching under a pale sun. It looked peaceful, almost like her home before the war. But peace was fragile. That night, as she tried to sleep, the dreams came. She was back on her planet, bright skies, glowing towers, laughter echoing in the streets. Then the sirens began. Fire rained from above, ships burned, people screamed. She saw her mother's face, terrified, shouting her name. Lyra reached out, but the world collapsed into smoke and silence. She woke up screaming. Her breath came fast, her body shaking. The outpost was dark, the only light coming from the soft blue glow of the reactor. Elias rushed in. "Lyra, what happened?" She pressed her hands to her chest, gasping. "The fire. The ships. They took everything." He knelt beside her, holding her shoulders gently. "It's just a dream." She looked at him, her eyes wide, tears glimmering. "No, it's memory." Elias stayed quiet. He didn't know how to erase her pain, but he could stay beside her. So he did. He sat on the floor next to her bed until her breathing slowed. "I can still hear them," she whispered. "Children crying. My mother calling my name." He sighed, resting his hand near hers but not touching. "I've heard those echoes too," he said softly. "Different faces. Different war. But the same sound." Lyra looked at him, surprised. "You've lost people too?" Elias nodded slowly. "My unit was stationed near the border. When the ceasefire broke, we were trapped. I watched my best friend bleed out trying to save civilians. After that, I stopped believing in orders." Lyra's expression softened. For the first time, she saw not just a human, but another survivor. They sat together in the half-light, two ghosts of different worlds bound by the same silence. After a long moment, Lyra whispered, "I don't understand humans. You fight and destroy, but you also save." Elias gave a tired smile. "That's because we're both things, monsters and healers. Depends on which one wins that day." She nodded slowly. Maybe Kareth weren't so different. The night passed quietly after that. Elias eventually stood. "Try to sleep again," he said softly. You're safe here. Lyra lay down, but her mind stayed awake. Safe. The word felt strange to her, like something fragile that could vanish any second. When morning came, she found him outside repairing a communications antenna buried in snow. She walked up beside him, wrapping his coat tighter around herself. "Can I help?" she asked. He smiled, handing her a wrench. "Sure, just don't break it." She rolled her eyes slightly. "You humans and your confidence." They worked together in silence, their breath forming white clouds in the cold air. After a while, Lyra looked up at the horizon. "Elias, if the signal works, could we contact someone?" He hesitated. "Maybe, but it's risky. Your signal might attract scavengers, or worse, patrol ships from either side." Lyra's voice grew quiet. "So I can never go home." He turned to her. "Maybe not the same home, but you can build a new one." Her eyes met his, and for a moment, she saw something strange there, hope. Later that day, as they finished their repairs, Elias noticed something flickering on his monitor inside. "That's odd," he muttered. "Energy reading." Nearby, Lyra stepped beside him. Could it be another survivor? "Maybe," Elias said slowly. "Or maybe trouble." Outside, far on the white horizon, a faint red light blinked through the mist. Lyra's chest tightened. It looked like a Kareth distress beacon, but it wasn't one of theirs. She looked at Elias nervously. "Someone's out there." Elias grabbed his rifle and checked the scanner. "Then we better find out who." Lyra hesitated, glancing at the window again. Something deep inside her whispered that this was the beginning of something dangerous, something that could destroy the fragile peace they'd found. But when Elias looked back at her and said, "You coming?" Anshi nodded without hesitation, because for the first time in her life, she wasn't running alone. They stepped out into the white silence together, two figures against the frozen dawn, unaware that what waited for them would test not only their survival, but their hearts. The world outside was silent again. The snow stretched endlessly, glowing faintly under the pale light of two distant moons. Elias tightened the straps of his coat and checked the scanner one last time. The red beacon was still blinking, steady, slow, about 2 kilometers north of the outpost. Lyra followed close behind, her breath visible in the freezing air. The wind tugged at her cloak, carrying faint whispers that almost sounded like voices. Her alien senses picked up strange vibrations beneath the surface. Metal, perhaps. Or something buried. Elias looked back at her. "You don't have to come. It might be dangerous." She shook her head firmly. "I've hidden enough. I need to see what's out there." He studied her for a moment, her face pale but determined. She wasn't the frightened girl he found in the snow anymore. She was changing, growing stronger each day. "All right," he said. "Stay close." They moved through the snow in silence. Only the crunch of their boots broke the stillness. The wind carried faint echoes, metal creaks, static hums. Elias held the scanner close, watching as the signal grew stronger. When they reached the ridge, Lyra stopped suddenly. "There," she said, pointing ahead. Below them, half buried in ice, was a small escape pod. Its hull was scorched, its lights flickering weakly. Smoke rose from one side where the impact had burned through the snow. Elias frowned. "That's not a human design." Lyra's chest tightened. "No, that's Kareth tech." They slid down carefully, boots slipping on the ice. The closer they got, the more damage they could see. Claw marks across the metal, bullet holes through the side panels. Something or someone had attacked it. Elias knelt beside the hatch. "Pressure's stable. Maybe someone's still inside." Lyra stepped forward, her heart racing. She placed her hand on the hull. Her markings glowed faintly, reacting to the familiar energy. "It's still active," she whispered. "But weak." Elias pulled a tool from his belt and started prying the hatch open. It groaned in protest before finally giving way. A puff of cold mist burst out. Inside, the air smelled of ozone and burnt metal. Lyra climbed in first. The light inside flickered weakly, illuminating a single figure slumped against the wall. A woman tall with deep violet skin and long silver hair tangled across her face. "By the stars," Lyra whispered. "That's Captain Saris." Elias blinked. "You know her?" "She was one of our fleet officers. My mother trusted her." Lyra knelt beside the woman, checking her pulse. "She's alive, but barely." Elias quickly passed her a med pack. "Here, use this. Human tech, but it should stabilize her." Lyra pressed the injector against the captain's neck. The device hissed softly. Sarah stirred, her eyes flickering open, bright violet filled with confusion and pain. "Lyra," she murmured weakly. Lyra's breath caught. "It's me. You're safe now." But when Saris's gaze shifted to Elias, her body tensed instantly. "Human," she hissed, reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. "Wait, he saved me," Lyra said quickly, holding her hands up. "He's not like the others." Saris struggled to sit up, glaring at Elias with pure distrust. "No human can be trusted. They burned our colonies." He didn't," Lyra interrupted firmly. "He kept me alive when I should have died." The older woman stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly she lowered her hand. Her expression softened slightly. "You always were too kind, child," Elias exhaled. "Nice to meet you too, Captain." Saris's eyes narrowed. "You shouldn't be here, human. The war may be over, but the ghosts haven't left." He gave a small shrug. "I've made peace with my ghosts." The tension hung in the air, cold and sharp. Lyra looked between them. "Please, no more fighting. We have to move her to the outpost before she freezes." Elias nodded. "Agreed." He lifted Saris carefully, wrapping her in a thermal blanket. The alien captain resisted for a second, but was too weak to fight. They began the slow walk back, the snow crunching beneath their feet. The storm clouds were returning, darker this time. Halfway there, Saris whispered to Lyra, "Why are you with him?" Lyra hesitated. "Because he reminded me that not all humans are enemies." Saris looked at her sadly. "You're young. You still believe in miracles." Lyra didn't answer. She just looked toward Elias, walking ahead of them, carrying the beacon and gear. In her heart, she wasn't sure if it was belief or something deeper, something she didn't yet understand. When they reached the outpost, Elias placed Saris on the cot where Lyra once lay. The warmth from the reactor filled the room. Elias handed Lyra a cup of water. "She'll need rest. That pod won't have much air left." Lyra nodded, but her mind was racing. Saris's presence meant something bigger. "Elias, if she survived, others might too." He looked at her carefully. "You think more Kareth ships escaped?" "Maybe. But if they did, they'll come looking for her or for me." Elias frowned. "And they won't be friendly." Lyra looked down. "No, they'll see you as the enemy." The reality of it sank into the room like cold air. The peace they had found, the quiet, the warmth, the laughter, it all suddenly felt fragile again. Outside, the storm began to howl once more, snow slamming against the walls. Elias stared into the firelight, his voice low. "Then we'll deal with it when it comes, together." Lyra turned to look at him. He didn't say it like a promise. He said it like a fact. And for the first time in a long while, she believed it. But as Captain Saris slept, the beacon outside still blinked faintly in the snow, a signal that had already been traced by something far away, something that was coming for them. The storm had passed by dawn, leaving the world eerily still. The snow glittered like crushed glass under the pale sunlight, and for a moment the planet looked peaceful again. But peace was only a thin curtain. Behind it, danger was already moving. Inside the outpost, Elias was adjusting the outer sensors when a sharp tone echoed from his console. He froze. The radar display flickered, an incoming object descending fast from orbit. Lyra looked up from beside the bed where Captain Saris was still resting. "What is it?" Elias frowned, eyes locked on the screen. "A ship, large, not human. It's entering the atmosphere." Lyra's blood ran cold. "It's Kareth." Saris stirred weakly, her voice hoarse. "They found the beacon." Elias turned to her. "They tracked it here, didn't they?" Saris nodded faintly. "They'll come for me. And for her. And if they see you, they'll shoot first." Elias finished grimly. Lyra stood, her heart pounding. "We have to talk to them." "I can explain." Elias shook his head sharply. "No. You can't reason with soldiers in war mode. They'll see me and open fire, but you saved me," she said desperately. "They have to understand. War doesn't listen," he replied quietly. The ground trembled. A deep rumble filled the air as a shadow passed over the outpost. Through the small window, Lyra saw it. A massive Kareth cruiser descending through the clouds, its silver wings cutting across the sky like a blade. Her breath caught. "That's a command ship. They brought an entire squad." Saris tried to sit up but winced. "You have to hide him," she said urgently to Lyra. "If they find a human here, they'll kill him and take you away." Elias stepped forward. No one's hiding. If they come in guns blazing, I'll handle it. Lyra turned to him, her voice shaking. Elias, please. They're soldiers, not raiders. You can't fight them. He smiled faintly. Didn't plan to. But I won't run either. The sound of engines grew louder, snow whipping up in spirals outside. The outpost shook as the ship landed nearby, its landing thrusters melting the ice beneath. A sharp hiss followed, the ramp lowering, armored figures emerging through the mist. Lyra's throat tightened. The soldiers wore dark blue armor marked with the Kareth sigil, a glowing spiral. Their rifles gleamed under the light. Elias moved to the back of the outpost, grabbing his old sidearm. Lyra followed him quickly, placing her hand over his. Please don't. If they see a weapon, they'll think it's an attack. He met her eyes, calm but tense. I don't plan to use it unless I have to. Before they could say more, a loud metallic knock echoed through the outpost door. Saris took a breath. Let me talk first. Lyra nodded and opened the lock. The door hissed and cold air rushed in. The Kareth soldiers entered, their eyes scanning everything. The leader, a tall alien with golden markings, stepped forward. His gaze fell on Saris instantly. Captain, you're alive! Saris nodded weakly. Barely. The human here found us. But before she could finish, the commander's eyes landed on Elias. His expression hardened. Human. He drew his weapon. Step away from her. Lyra moved quickly, standing between them. Stop, he's not the enemy. The commander's voice was sharp. Move aside, child. You've been tricked. Humans can't be trusted. Elias raised his hand slowly, showing no threat. I don't want trouble. I only helped her survive. Lies, the commander hissed. Your kind helped burn our colonies, Lyra's voice cracked. And my kind destroyed his. That silenced them for a moment. The soldiers exchanged uncertain glances. Lyra stepped closer. You're all fighting ghosts of the past. He's not your enemy. He saved my life, Captain Saris's too. Saris, still weak, tried to sit up. It's true, she rasped. Without him, we'd both be dead. The commander lowered his weapon slightly, but suspicion still lingered. Why would a human risk himself for Kareth lives? Elias answered quietly. Because no one else would. There was something in his tone, tired, sincere, that made even the hardened soldiers pause. Lyra's eyes glimmered. He's the reason I'm standing here. The reason I'm alive. And if you kill him now, then maybe we don't deserve saving. Silence filled the outpost. Only the soft hum of the reactor could be heard. Finally, the commander spoke, voice softer. The council will want to hear of this. A human aiding Kareth. It changes things. Saris nodded slowly. Then take us. But he comes too. Elias blinked. Wait, what? Lyra turned to him, a faint smile on her face. You said you don't run. Then come with us. He sighed, half amused, half anxious. You're going to get me killed one day. She smiled wider. Then I'll save you next time. The soldiers exchanged murmurs but obeyed their captain. They guided Saris toward the ramp while Lyra and Elias followed. The cold air hit their faces again as they stepped out. The ship loomed before them, massive, glowing with energy. Elias stared at it, both awed and wary. Never thought I'd see one of these up close without being shot at. Lyra looked at him softly. Maybe today things change. He glanced back at her, then at the horizon. Maybe. As they boarded the ship, the engines began to roar again. The outpost, once a lonely symbol of isolation, grew smaller and smaller behind them. Neither of them noticed the shadow that moved behind the clouds above. A second ship, unmarked and silent, tracking their path. Because peace was never that simple. And as the stars came into view, Lyra felt both hope and dread rising in her chest. The world she thought she lost was waiting, but it would not welcome her easily. Beside her, Elias looked at the stars and murmured, Whatever happens next, we face it together. Lyra nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. Together! The ship rose higher, vanishing into the silver clouds, carrying with it two souls from opposite worlds, united by one fragile thread of kindness that refused to die. The ship glided through the upper atmosphere, cutting through the clouds like a silent blade. Elias stood near one of the view panels, watching as the frozen planet faded below them. For the first time in years, he was leaving the ground, but not as a soldier, not as an enemy. As a guest. Maybe even something more. Lyra stood beside him, her eyes glowing faintly as the stars began to appear. The vast blackness of space stretched before them, beautiful, endless, and terrifying. "You've never been on a Kareth ship before, have you?" she asked softly. Elias chuckled. "No. Usually your ships were trying to blow mine out of the sky." Her lips curved into a small smile. "And yet you still came aboard." He looked at her gently. "Because you asked." The warmth in her chest was strange, new. She turned away quickly, pretending to study the view. "Don't read too much into it. You're under my protection," Elias grinned. "Oh, I feel safer already." Before Lyra could respond, the door hissed open. Captain Cirrus entered, leaning slightly on a support bar. Her color had returned, though her movements were still slow. "We've set course for the capital station," she said. "The High Council will want answers." Elias's grin faded. "And those answers? What exactly do they want to hear?" Cirrus's tone was firm but not unkind. "That depends on them. They haven't seen a human up close since the armistice." Lyra frowned. "They'll listen. I'll make them." Cirrus looked at her meaningfully. "They'll listen, child, but that doesn't mean they'll forgive." The words hung in the air like cold smoke. Elias crossed his arms, his jaw tightening. "I didn't come here to beg for forgiveness." "No," Cirrus said quietly. "But you may have to fight for your right to live." Hours later, the ship emerged from hyperspace. The Kareth capital station filled the viewport, a massive ringed structure orbiting a dying red star. Dozens of ships drifted around it like silver fish, their hulls glowing with soft blue energy. Elias had seen many space stations in his time, but nothing like this. It wasn't made of steel and glass. It was alive. Veins of light pulsed across its surface, giving the illusion of a breathing giant. "It's beautiful," he whispered. Lyra's voice was proud, wistful. "This is what's left of our civilization, the heart that still beats." As the ship approached the docking bay, Elias noticed the tension in the soldiers' faces. Even they looked uneasy. When the ramp lowered, the air that rushed in was thick with heat and light. 2 council guards waited at the entrance, their golden armor gleaming. Between them stood an elder, a tall figure with silver markings down his face. His eyes glowed faintly blue, ancient and sharp. "Captain Cirrus," he said, his voice echoing like thunder. "You return from the dead, and you bring a human." Elias stepped forward slowly. "Name's Elias, not human." The elder tilted his head. "Bold for someone who walks among those his kind tried to erase." Lyra moved quickly, her tone firm but respectful. "Elder Ryan, he is not like the others. He saved me when no one else would." Ryan's gaze shifted to her. "Lyra, daughter of the Kareth colony of Vetra. Your voice carries weight, but this matter is not simple. You bring an enemy to our sanctuary." "He's not the enemy," she said sharply. "He's proof that mercy still exists." The elder studied her, then Elias. "We shall see." He turned, motioning them forward. "The council awaits." The great hall of the council was breathtaking. Giant columns of crystal light rose from the floor, illuminating 12 floating platforms where the councilors sat. Each one represented a surviving Kareth world, scarred but unbroken. Elias stood in the center, surrounded by light, while dozens of alien eyes stared down at him. He could feel their distrust pressing against him like heat. One counselor, her voice cutting and cold, spoke first. "You claim this human saved our kin? Why?" Elias looked up, meeting her gaze. "Because she needed help." Laughter rippled through the chamber. Another counselor sneered. "Humans do not help Kareth. They conquer them." Lyra stepped forward quickly. "He didn't conquer anyone. He found me in the snow dying. He carried me to shelter, gave me warmth, and shared his food when he barely had any for himself." Her voice trembled, full of truth. "He didn't see an alien. He saw a person." The hall went silent. Even the crystals seemed to hum softer. Elias took a breath. "I fought in the war. I've seen what both sides did. And I'll be honest, humans weren't saints. Neither were you. But I stayed behind after it ended because I couldn't live with what I saw. I thought helping her might balance the scale a little." Elder Ryan leaned forward. "Do you expect gratitude for your guilt?" Elias's voice was low, steady. "No. Just a chance to prove not every human is the same." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the eldest counselor stood slowly. "Perhaps the stars are testing us. Mercy once lost must be learned again." He looked at Lyra. "You believe this human is different?" "I know he is," she said firmly. Ryan's eyes flickered between them, suspicion softening into thought. Then we shall let the stars judge. He will stay under observation in the lower quarters until we decide his fate. Lyra's heart sank. Observation? You mean imprisonment? Ryan didn't answer. He only gestured to the guards. Elias raised his hands calmly. It's all right, he said quietly to her. I've been locked up before. I'll manage. Lyra's voice shook. You saved my life. I won't let them take yours. He smiled faintly. Then don't fight them yet. Wait for your moment. As the guards led him away, Lyra watched helplessly, her chest tight with anger and fear. Elias looked back once, catching her gaze through the shimmering light. For that single heartbeat, neither war nor history existed. Only two souls trying to bridge the space between worlds. But in the shadows above, unseen by all, a figure watched from a hidden balcony, eyes glowing red, voice whispering softly into a communicator. The council plays with fire, it said. Prepare the attack. The human dies before dawn. The lights in the lower quarters flickered softly, casting long shadows across the metallic floor. Elias sat alone in a narrow cell. No bars, just an invisible energy field humming quietly in front of him. The air smelled faintly of iron and ozone. He leaned back against the cold wall, staring at the glowing ceiling. Observation, they called it. But he knew what it was. A polite prison. Outside his cell, two Kareth guards stood motionless, their blue armor reflecting the dim light. Every few minutes, one of them glanced in his direction, as if expecting him to do something. But Elias didn't move. He just sat there silent, thinking. He wasn't angry. He'd expected this. But what kept his heart heavy wasn't fear. It was Lyra. He could still see her face when they took him away, the way her hands had trembled as she tried not to cry. He had wanted to tell her it would be okay, but words had failed him. Now, in this cold silence, her voice was the only warmth he had left. Then he heard a whisper. Elias! He looked up sharply. For a moment, he thought he imagined it. But then a small shimmer appeared near the wall and Lyra stepped through. A faint holographic distortion around her. She wore a dark cloak, her eyes glowing softly. Lyra? He whispered. How did you? She smiled faintly. Kareth tech. I borrowed it, he raised an eyebrow. Borrowed? She shrugged. Maybe stole a little. Despite everything, he laughed quietly. You're getting better at this human thing. Her smile faded as she looked at him through the energy field. They plan to transfer you at sunrise. Elder Ryan thinks it's just for questioning, but someone higher up wants you gone. Elias's expression hardened. An execution? She nodded. They call it containment, but it means the same. He sighed, rubbing his face. I figured it wouldn't take long. Lyra stepped closer to the barrier. I won't let it happen. Lyra, no, she said sharply, her voice trembling. You saved me when I had nothing. You gave me warmth, kindness, life. I can't just watch them destroy you. He stood, walking close to the glowing field between them. If you break me out, they'll brand you a traitor. I don't care, she whispered. You're worth more than their laws. For a moment they stood there, inches apart but separated by light. Her hand lifted slowly, pressing against the field. Elias placed his palm on the same spot, feeling the faint warmth through the barrier. I don't know what's happening between us, he said softly. But whatever it is, it's real. Lyra's eyes shimmered with emotion. Then trust me. Before he could respond, a deep rumble echoed through the corridor. The lights flickered again, this time violently. Sirens blared, red light flooding the halls. What now? Elias muttered. Lyra's expression turned fearful. It's them, the strike force. They came early. Strike force? An extremist Kareth unit. They don't follow the council. They believe all humans must die for balance. Elias clenched his fists. Perfect timing. She tapped a control node on her wrist. The energy barrier around his cell fizzled and dropped. Go, she urged. He hesitated. You're coming too. I have to get to the control deck, she said quickly. If I can override the security drones, I can buy you time. He grabbed her wrist. You're not facing them alone. She met his eyes, fierce and desperate. Elias, if you stay with me, they'll kill you before we reach the lift. Please, trust me one last time. The sound of boots thundered down the hallway. Shadows of soldiers appeared at the far end, weapons raised. Elias's jaw tightened. He stepped closer to Lyra, pressing his forehead against hers. Don't die, all right? A shaky smile touched her lips. Not before I see the stars with you again." Then she pushed him toward the service tunnel and vanished in a flash of light. The corridors above turned into chaos. Alarms wailed as explosions shook the decks. Lyra sprinted through the smoke-filled hallways, her cloak whipping behind her. Sparks rained from the ceiling as energy bolts flew past her. She reached the control chamber, diving behind a console as 2 enemy soldiers stormed in. Without hesitation, she activated the console's energy surge, overloading the room's systems. The blast sent the soldiers flying. "Sorry," she muttered. "I don't have time to explain." Her hands flew over the controls, locking out the station's security network. She could see the schematics flashing on the screen. The extremists were already deep inside the council sector. Then she saw something worse. A fusion charge had been armed near the lower quarters, Elias's level. "No," she whispered, heart pounding. "No, no, no." She hit the communicator. "Elias, can you hear me?" His voice crackled through, barely. "What the hell's going on?" "They planted a bomb near your sector. You have to get out, now." "I can't, the corridors collapsed." Lyra's hands trembled. "Hold on, I'm coming." Elias coughed through the smoke. The floor was cracked, heat seeping through the walls. He could hear the faint ticking of the charge somewhere nearby. He stumbled forward, half blind, his body aching from the blast. Then through the haze a shape appeared, Lyra running toward him. "Elias!" He turned, relief washing over his face. "You really don't listen, do you?" She smiled weakly. "Neither do you." Without wasting another second, she pulled out a glowing crystal from her belt. "This is a phase crystal. It can warp space for a few seconds. If I time it right, we can get out before the explosion." Elias frowned. "And if you time it wrong?" She met his gaze steadily. "Then we die together." He grinned faintly. "Could be worse." She activated the crystal. The world around them bent and shimmered, colors twisting, sound fading into silence. For a brief heartbeat, everything turned white. Then the explosion came, bright, blinding, tearing through the deck. The energy wave rippled outward, but where Elias and Lyra had stood, there was nothing, just a faint shimmer fading into the air. When the light cleared, the station was in chaos, but somewhere far beyond its burning walls, 2 figures appeared in the void, floating, wrapped in the soft glow of the phase crystal's energy. Lyra gasped, the stars reflecting in her eyes. Elias reached for her hand, their fingers touching. "You did it," he said softly. She smiled through her tears. "We did." Below them, the Kareth station burned against the red star like a dying ember. Above them, endless space stretched open, silent, infinite, and waiting. And for the first time since the war, a human and a Kareth floated together among the stars, not as enemies, not as survivors, but as the beginning of something new,